Try again. There you
Hey,
go.
I'm just going to blame it on Mercury retrograde. That's all I'm going to do because
That's a
it
good
comes,
idea.
it comes in handy sometimes. Okay, well, I guess I don't really need to do the opening again. Everyone who watches it on YouTube will just have to suffer through the Mercury retrograde mishap. So here we are at episode 2 of the Cancer cycle. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Cancer energy and holding on. And then we're going to segue into talking about family. And so let's see how I managed to do that. So
Okay.
part of the Cancer ethos, it is holding things close, and it has to do with nurturing and connecting and caring. It's just that sometimes Cancer does not um, do any kind of purging or editing of the things and the feelings that it's holding on to. So every year as the sun goes through Cancer, no matter where that might happen to be in your personal birth chart, you're going to have that feeling that it's time for a little bit of clearing out. Or you're going to feel like, oh my God, I'm riding a surfboard and I don't know if I can actually navigate this because, and this is going to connect to what Sonja and I are going to talk about when we talk about vulnerability, because that is a kind of a water sign thing, vulnerability. So this is the perfect time of year to really take a look at, like, one of the best ways to figure out if you're holding on to things is go look in your closet and see how many pieces of clothing you've been loath to let go of. Yeah, I need to do more of that. But anyway, um, and so does Sonia apparently. So, we always think of these things as fairly complex matters, but actually, navigating life can be a whole lot simpler if you don't try to make it um, more difficult than it actually is. Because, working through the things that you hold on, whether it's emotionally or physically, mentally or spiritually, is is always a life-changing event, and there's a reason why the sun goes through Cancer every year, so we have an opportunity to really connect to our deeper feelings, which are go past our emotions actually. So not sure I have much more to say about that. I always intend everything to be sort of a jumping off point as opposed to a guide on how to do it, because we are each individuals and each have our own processes. And when the sun goes through Cancer, it's a really a good opportunity to start to understand a little bit more about how you emotionally process your life and what forms the emotional foundation of your life, which segues into talking about family. Because what we know about ourselves, especially when we're little, comes from the people around us, the environment around us. And, it often engages that need for safety and security. So we find the things that we can hang on to that give us a sense of comfort and safety. So that can be almost anything. And so take some time to really think about the family that you were born into. Now, we have a myth about family that really needs letting go of, partly because we're born, there is no such thing as a perfect family. I don't even know what that is. I don't even think there's what's known as a normal family. Because, of course, you come in with two parents, depending, they're navigating life. Especially if you're the oldest and they've never been a parent, or even if they have, every child brings different things to the table. I have 3 children, each of them is a water sign. But yet, just because they have that sensitivity doesn't mean that they navigate life the same way, because they don't. And so, of course, your chart, should you ever choose to have it done, will show you what your family dynamic was like when you were born. But you don't need to do that in order to understand what it is you have brought forward that's about family and how they see you. So when you're little, They see you in a particular way and you think, okay, that's who I am. Well, that may or may not be true. And in many cases, it's partially true and partially not true. So, again, son's going through cancer. Think about your family. Try to be as objective as you possibly can because it's not always easy because there's always hurt feelings. I don't care. You might have had the lovingest parents on the planet, but that doesn't mean they didn't come home one day and one of them lost their job and suddenly they're not as nice a person as you would like them to be. And how do those things, you know, make an imprint on you? So I was thinking about this because part of this opening is for me to share some of how I've experienced these things. So I had a couple of memories come back. And the one that really stood out to me was I was a toddler. I don't remember exactly how old it was. And my mother had just carefully combed my hair and made it look pretty. And then my grandpa, with a big smile on his face, decided to tuck my hair behind my ears. So meanwhile, I can see my mother's behind him. Uh, and she's not best pleased at this. And it suddenly struck me while I was thinking about this story because it's always such a warm memory to me. But then I realized I now always have to have my hair like this, and I hate putting it behind my ears. So that's a kind of a funny story, but it's also extremely symbolic in many respects, or in all respects. And I just wanted to say something about memories, about any memories that you might have. They don't have to be factually true. We kind of get stuck in well, is this true or is it not? No, cancer tells you it's your feeling, your experience of it, which is your truth. So, and then I did invite both my producer, Andrea, and my guest, Sonja, to see if they wanted to share a story. And if they don't want to share a story, they can share one of their favorite things because, we set a lot of emotional store in certain things. And so I get to go first because it's
Of
my show.
course.
Okay.
Of course you do.
So, when I was younger, I thought I would never accumulate as much stuff as I have, but I love rocks. So, and I love teddy bears, but this is the piece that wanted. It's a piece of kyanite, which is
Wow.
on my
Beautiful.
altar. And it is one of my favorite things. Like when I pick it up, I just feel, well, I need to be grounded, which is probably why I love rocks. 'Cause otherwise. So, Andy, did you have anything you'd like to share?
Well, so cancer's on my second house, and I collect a lot of beads with cancer, and so I want to show what makes me feel comfortable. Okay, this is my husband. Speaking of family, I made this beaded portrait of my husband, and
Wow.
and that's been the son going through cancer. But I also made this little bead kit for this girl I met yesterday. She wants to start beading, so I made her a little bead kit, and I just thought that's what cancer is for me, is like beading and crafting and like all of those like relics that you pass down to your family and things like that.
Okay.
That's lovely. Wow.
What about you,
Well,
Sonja?
family is a loaded subject for me. What can I say? And I loved what you said about there's no definition for family because uh, me growing up, I certainly didn't have a family that I would have called the picture perfect family. And I always dreamed of having a picture perfect family because I always thought, well, a mom is supposed to be nurturing and is supposed to be this and that and supposed to do that for her children and connect with them and love them. And I realized, that as I'm becoming an adult, or while I was already an adult, I realized that I was chasing a fantasy. I was chasing the fantasy of like having a a, a perfect mother, or chasing the fantasy of being part of a perfect family, which was never going to happen because my family is far from perfect. And my mother is not very motherly. She's just not that type, right? And that's totally okay because it made me who I am, made me extremely independent. It made me not not need to stick around, you know? I mean, I was like, when I was 18, gone, straight left, left town, you know? I was like, that's it for me. So, but that was only possible because there was no clear bonding, right? If I would have had a family that was all lovey-dovey and cuddly, which I love because I'm a Taurus and I love to cuddle, I love to hug. If I would have had that, I would have never left. So, and I wouldn't have had experienced the things that I experienced. And of course, Cancer is in my ninth house, or
Ah,
actually intercepted in my ninth house. So, you know, travel and going to other countries was what I needed to do, you know?
well, thanks for that. Would it, I have a couple of minutes here if anybody else would like to share a story about their family. And nobody's jumping on to say yes, so, and I don't pick on people. Just don't pick on
Pick
people.
on me, come on. I'm just kidding.
Oh, but that's not on the broadcast, is it? Do I pick on you? Anyways, let's
Yeah.
not, you're trying to get me to go down a rabbit hole. Let's stop that right. Uh, yeah, not sure what to say. Oh, Wendy would like to share something.
I was just going to say, as I get older, I mean, I think everybody had a rough time growing up. It's just part of life. It's part of the human experience. And, I did along with a whole lot of other people. Some people had it worse, some people had it better. I was sort of somewhere in the middle. But I'm a water sign, I'm Scorpio, and so it really, I was very sensitive to it. And what I found is that as I've gotten older and done a lot of work on myself and a lot of digging into emotional archaeology of my experience with my family, that I've started to be able to see my parents more objectively and understand more of where they were coming from and have some compassion for them as people, not as my parents. That I can disconnect from that emotional expectation of the small child that's still
Yeah.
inside, that's still sort of going. But my good parents are out there somewhere, I'm sure.
Hmm.
I
But
used to, I used to wonder if I was somebody's dream, very Neptunian. Then I used to wonder what would happen if my mother, I think she was in love with somebody before she was in love with my dad. And then I used to wonder what would have happened had she married him. And I was only 9 or 10. So, people underestimate children a lot. Well, thanks, Wendy. That was really
definitely.
kind of you to share that. Uh, and of course, as always, I love
Yeah.
collaborating. So that's great. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
trying to
loved it
be,
too.
I'm trying to be more mindful of time, which is not my usual thing, so that Sonia and I have lots of time to talk about what we're going to talk about, which kind of a segue into what's coming next. So, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to say it again, just in case people forgot in the last 10 minutes that I said we were going to talk about vulnerability. And also, Sonia's going to talk about self-coaching tips. Uh, how to take stuff. Oh, geez. All of a sudden, it's like I had the sentence in my head and then it just kind of evaporated into space.
Neptune stationing, going
Yes, we're going
retrograde.
to talk about that when we get to what's up in the bowl. We're going to be talking about the Neptune station and also, good Lord, we're going to be talking about Venus retrograde and, no, not Venus retrograde. That's not for a couple, 3 months yet, right? All right. I had it all lined up in my head and it went somewhere again. Oh, just a bit of a creative update for the podcast itself. A Roman Williams, who's a lovely astrologer and a composer and a songwriter, is in the midst of creating some meditation music for me, which I'll be using on the podcast. And then I think, we're going very professional. Pretty soon we'll have a musical introduction, which means I won't
Nice.
have to fumble at the beginning, or maybe I still will. I don't really know. Uh, and of course, just an update on August the 6th. in the second episode of the Leo cycle. Colin Bedell will be my guest, and we're going to be talking about trust.
Mhm.
So episode 1 of the Leo cycle will happen on July the 23rd, just as the sun enters Leo and joins up with happiness's Jupiter. So it's a good thing we get to start that cycle feeling like it's a party, because there's a couple really intense eclipses on the horizon. But I'm, as typically Aquarian, getting way ahead of myself. So time to move on to what's in the bowl. So it might feel right now like things are quieter, but all the energy that was brought on by the change of Mercury going retrograde, Jupiter into Leo, Mars into Gemini, is still percolating in the background. And there's going to be some interesting, Jupiter and Uranus are going to be really busy for the rest of the Cancer cycle. So there's going to be a lot of energy where you feel like you might be lifting off the ground. And that, of course, will also connect to Neptune going retrograde, which is going to do tomorrow. So Neptune by nature is kind of like swimming in the ocean or in space, because things are not tangible at all. But it's about dreams, it's about visions, it's about connecting to something greater than yourself. It's the planet that really, helps you connect to the length and breadth of what the universe is, which of course can be somewhat scary, because there are, as far as we know, no limits. Got a lot of physical objects apparently hanging in a void, which is kind of what Neptune's like. You can feel like you're hanging around in a space where there doesn't appear to be anything. But that's where the birth and the creation of new things comes from. It comes from that space that cannot be defined. So when it goes retrograde, it kind of intensifies that feeling. And it really is a time to become really more, and I hate to use the word spiritual because people have so many different interpretations. I want to say that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. So getting in touch with that spiritual side of yourself is not like going to a foreign country. It's something that already lives inside you or as part of you. Because of course, there are traditions that insist that the soul houses the body, not the other way around. So it brings up a vastness, and it can be like, again, nothing to define it. It's like meditation, and meditation is a perfect thing to do when Neptune is retrograde. And meditation comes in many different forms. You could be meditating while you're gardening. It's just a change in brainwave pattern. You're in that space, A, just before you go to sleep, and B, when you wake up in the morning. So it's just a conscious invitation to do that. So this is a perfect time to work with the happy little astro bites that I shared in episode 1 as kind of like a mantra, a door opening. So just be aware that things are going to feel kind of not even soupy, because I don't even, it's like, it's knowing that so much is possible, but not being able to physically quantify what that is at this point in time. And it's just going to draw you inward at a time when this might be extremely helpful with all the energy that we've got bouncing around, with Mars going into Gemini, Jupiter going into Leo, Uranus newly into Gemini. The image I just got is like the last couple of months have been like jumping up and down on your bed, trying to launch yourself into space or something, or on a trampoline. That's kind of like so having that Neptune energy to take you inward is actually a blessing. And then 2 days later, Venus goes into Virgo, which will kind of ground us a bit more. So Venus in Virgo is, that expression, chop wood, carry water. That really typifies the Virgo energy. It's about recognizing that the small steps in life, that the things that, especially since the sun's in Cancer, that the things that you do that are familiar to you can really ground you while all this other energy is going bzzz all the time.
Yeah.
So, so Venus in Virgo is a lot different than Venus in Leo. It's not party central. But Venus is about what we value and about what we love. So how do we find value and pleasure in the little things, like going outside and sitting under a tree, or going for a walk, or dancing in the kitchen to current music, even if you're 76, like I am. It's those moments of joy in just what you're doing, as opposed to it necessarily taking you anywhere. Sometimes in our society, we get a little bit wound up in where is this taking me? And I was thinking a lot about that in terms of the podcast, right? And I've been doing a lot of chop wood, carry water for the last almost a year. Right, Andy?
Absolutely. I'm very proud of you.
Thanks. So,
He builds a whole
so,
house doing that.
and what was the other thing that's supposed to happen? Oh, the new moon. How could we forget about the new moon? So,
Mhm.
this is our yearly visit to the new moon in Cancer, which kind of brings on some of the things I was talking about. You can set some new intentions in terms of how you're going to relate to yourself on a feeling level. Getting past our emotional reactions, because Cancer can be highly reactionary and very defensive. And I know because I have a Moon Uranus mutual reception, so I can be really objective one minute and very defensive the next. And you get me and my children together, it can be very interesting because we can all be defensive in our own way. So as we have this new moon in Cancer, it's an opportunity, because the new moon, we always forget, is still the dark moon. So combined with that Neptune going retrograde, it's a good, just be open to whatever floats through your consciousness. Because and you don't have to do anything about it. You just need to see what floats through so that you can form an intention. Because that's partly what the new moon is about, is forming intentions that you're going to carry forward. Now, interestingly enough, this new moon is going to be a bit of a challenge, only because the only aspect that's being made is the new moon. So it's not talking to any of the other.
It's conjunct Mercury.
Well, but what degree? Pardon me while we do a
Ni-
little.
19 degrees is
But
the retrograde Mercury.
that's a separating aspect. It's not applying to anything. So that's kind of, you're carrying that retrograde Mercury energy forward, but I didn't. Sorry, I looked at the chart and I did not see that. So thank you for bringing that up, because it gives it a slightly different color. Slightly different color. So
It's only 2 degrees away from the moon.
I know, but it's still, I'm sorry, I'm doing a horror thing. It's, which is, it's not applying to that. So
Okay.
so, but
That's
that
just
doesn't mean,
how I would read it, but that's
yeah,
okay. If you do
I
it
know,
differently,
but
that's fine.
I'm going to address that right now. So it doesn't mean that the conjunction, prior conjunction, I'm talking astrology to those people who are not astrologers. It means they've had their connection, and the energy of that connection is carried forward.
Right.
Right? So it's also a time of, thank you for bringing that up, because an opportunity to recalibrate thoughts, processes, decisions you've made in the past, attitudes that you have about people, how you've communicated with people. So thank you so much. That was really great. Because yeah, I'm not really sure what else I have to say about that, because I have to say, I have that happy little thing that happens when someone says bzz, and I go, oh yeah, that's really important. Anyway,
Could I add something about the new moon? I was just looking at is that the sun and moon are, well, the sun is very closely parallel to Mars,
Oh,
which is bound to add a whole lot of energy to whatever else happens. So,
oh. So thank you for bringing that up. As you can tell from for people who are watching this and listening to it, that astrology is a very broad, complex topic, and we all have our, as astrologers, different approaches. And so I always appreciate when someone pops in and adds something to the soup, adds another ingredient to the soup. So that's interesting, that parallel, because it'll bring up a lot of, well, it could bring up a lot of anxiety. Because the moon and Mars, yeah, the moon and Mars
Mhm.
do not speak well to each other most of the time, just because their energies are so different.
no, the
Uh,
moon
Mm.
is not parallel to Mars, just the sun. If it was both, then it would
okay,
be an eclipse. But sorry,
thank you for correcting me.
I'm doing astro talk here, which I guess you're trying
Okay,
to
well,
avoid.
oh, well,
Sorry about
that's, I don't know if I can overlook that. I'm teasing,
that.
teasing you. As again, part of the purpose of this show is to offer many perspectives and for people to contribute when they would like to contribute. So I appreciate that, Wendy. Thanks. So I think we've said enough. So that Mars parallel to the sun, because the moon is just less passed over it again, there's a lot. Yeah, I would be a little bit careful about communication in the 2 or 3 days following the new moon, because you might feel compelled from an emotional place to really um, gather all that sun, Mars, Mercury energy and splat. I don't know how else to
Splat.
describe it. Um,
That's funny.
okay, so I think it's time for what I call this and that, because it means that I can call it what I could do whatever I want in the segment called this and that. And today Sonja and I are going to have a little chat or a long chat. We have time for a chat. That's all I know. Okay. So, if I understood how to use the technology a little bit better, I'd make us the only people that could be seen. But right now, to be honest, it's Mercury retrograde and I don't care.
It's
So one
all
of the
good.
things that, you and I had a chat ahead of time so we could sort of figure out what we were going to talk about. And so, but I wanted to start with something very basic, which is what is vulnerability, because everybody has different definitions of this. And Sonja is not only a professional astrologer, but she's a registered um, life
Life
relationship coach.
coach.
I'll get
Hmm.
it right sooner or later. Uh, so, in your work, what does vulnerability mean to you?
Well, that's a really great question. I would say that for people who have been raised in a safe environment, vulnerability means that you can be open and you can share and you can let yourself be, your heart can be wide open and you can just be completely yourself. Your child self can be there, your baby self can be there, your teenager self can be there, and your adult can be there, right? Your inner adult, inner child, inner, yeah. But when you were raised in a family where there was trauma, where there was abuse, where it wasn't safe to be yourself or to, you know, speak your truth or to be yourself in any way, shape, or form, then vulnerability becomes dangerous. And so for people who grew up in that kind of an environment, uh, to one degree or another, vulnerability can be something that is very precious to them and that they need to protect and where they need to really pull in and guard themselves, right? And so you see that with like cancer, for example, is the sign of vulnerability in the sense of like the inner baby where you're just vulnerable, you just are, right? You just have feelings. It's the pre-verbal state. But when you go to Scorpio, which is the next water sign, there it depends on whether there was trauma or not. If there was trauma, Scorpio gets protective and puts up a wall or a shield. It sort of gets very sort of like, boom, no, I'm not giving that to anybody, right? So, and in the third water sign in Pisces, we learn to open up again and to forgive and to let go of traumas, let go of needing to protect ourselves. We forgive ourselves, we forgive other people in our lives. So Pisces can undo all of that pain, all of that trauma, all of that stuff. And so we can get back to vulnerability again, like healthy vulnerability. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's funny because until today, when I was kind of preparing myself for this, I'd never really thought about where vulnerability fit in the zodiacal, not necessarily planetary wise, but more what sign would you assign, would you put it in? And so I really appreciate that explanation because,
Yeah.
vulnerability is part of all of the water signs, but it's your initial experiences, as you described, which determine how open you are to being vulnerable.
Yes.
And the truth is, I feel like everybody has some issues around vulnerability, and particularly in our culture, we tend to view that as some sort of a weakness, as opposed to,
Yes.
I think, the greatest strength you can possibly have is that capacity, because it means you know how to be and do yourself.
Absolutely. And it takes courage. It takes courage to be vulnerable, especially for people who have had bad experiences growing up. It takes a lot of courage. Yeah.
And so in your work, do you find there are people that really do know how to be vulnerable without having had to practice it? Because there is a way to practice it, correct?
Yes, there's always a way to practice things. Anything can be practiced.
Well, there Virgo's there. No, anyway.
That's the good news. That's the good news. Wax on, wax off. Right? That's the Virgo way. Yeah, totally. Anything can be practiced. Yes, it's the willingness that we need to have to do the practices, right, and the awareness. Um, but um, but yeah, I mean, I would say that. What was the question that you asked me earlier?
Well, so really, I guess that what I was trying to do was to get to the other question that has how do we open up our
Yes,
to ourselves? Like, what might be
yes.
the first one of the first, what are a couple of things you can do if you feel like you're stagnant?
Well, in order to open up to yourself, you really need to be, first of all, aware that you're not open yet. Without that awareness, you're not going to be able to do it.
And how would you how does it how does a person become aware? Like, what qualities in your life or things do you see that you would give you some sense of that you're not that you're closed?
Well, if you constantly bump against things, right? When there's constant conflict or constant things that stop you or limitations that you're experiencing all the time, then there's something in you that you're not open to or that you're not investigating, right? Because in order to experience that out there in the world, it has to be, there has to be something inside of you that's creating that, right? So, there's that saying, when you get up in the morning and you meet an asshole, and maybe that's just an asshole. But if you get up in the morning and you meet an asshole every hour or every minute, then maybe you are the asshole. You know that saying?
No,
Am I
I
allowed
just
to
thought
say
that,
this?
hey, it's my podcast. You can, as long as you're not mean to anybody, you're fine. Well,
But but the saying is there to just crystallize that, it comes, your reality comes from your behavior, from your lenses, from your how you see the world, right? And so if you see the world as like there's only enemies out there or there's only bad stuff happening, then what does that say about the relationship that you have with yourself?
well, it's funny because people don't always see that you've created a similar relationship with yourself as you have with everyone else. That
Yes,
and
yes.
I think that, I mean, there's, I speak from experience that like for instance, when I was in elementary school, my report card said pretty much the same thing. Leslie's a really good student. She just talks too much and she daydreams too much. And if you consistently get a message like that,
Right.
then
Then you believe
you
it.
start, yeah, but you start to be what other people want you to be. And I think that that's also
Yeah.
part of the process. It takes you to understanding that you need to be more open to yourself because you're not living who you are. You're living some image that's been,
How other people see you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. You live into the expectations of other people. Yes. That's possible too. Absolutely. And again, awareness is very important because if you observe yourself and you observe how you meet life and how you connect with people, how you communicate with yourself, like you're in a dialogue. If you observe, you know, what are your most favorite reactions to things, right?
That's a good
Because we all
question.
have them, right? We all have them. Um, then if you observe that very quickly, you will go like, oh yeah, there's about 3 reactions that I have all the time. It's like ABC, you know? And that awareness is important because once you know that, then you can start to work with that. Before you know it, you can't work with it.
Right.
And then I always say there's 3 things. Awareness is step number 1. Step number 2 is compassion. And this is always one that people skip. It's self-compassion. A lot of people will skip self-compassion. They will become aware of something and then they go into fixing mode. Fix, 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 fix. I don't like this about myself. It has to be different. I have to let it go, or I got to do something else, or I got to do it the opposite of that, right? But no, 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 no. That's not how it works. You can't force yourself to not be who you are, right? Or to not have a behavior that was trained into you or that you've taken on for like 20, 30, 40, or 50 years, right? So step number 2 is always self-compassion. You got to be compassionate with yourself.
And I have to admit, I have had trouble with that particular step quite a
Yes.
bit, right? And
Yes.
so
I
when you
know.
describe that, you go right to the fix. Yeah, I totally get it. I totally get it.
We all do it. We all do it. I mean, most people will do that. I mean, that's human nature, okay? But that's why this step is so important. Self-compassion. Once you're aware of something, be compassionate and kind with yourself. And then the third step is that compassion and that self-awareness and that kindness that you bring towards yourself and that behavior or that feeling or that reaction or whatever it is, that is what creates a shift, because that self-compassion creates space, and space is what's needed in order for us to change. We cannot change when there is no space for us that's been made to
Mhm.
change.
Which is really counterintuitive to some of the messages in our world.
I
Um,
know.
that just keep moving forward. There's no time for ebb. It's just flow. Everything's flow. It's flow, flow. Just get on it. Get going. Get
Get
something.
over it. Yeah.
And
Get moving.
I, I,
Uh-huh.
I well, my challenge in life has been to be connected to my body. And so been doing a lot of work in
Mhm.
that area and discovered
Mhm.
that my body goes, I'm sorry, brain, but you cannot run everything. You cannot
Mhm.
run everything. I
Mhm.
have something to say.
Yeah.
So on the days when learning to work with what my body's saying, look, I'm busy. The space to process is basically what you're talking about. And I
Yes.
really appreciate that because it gives some definition to what I personally have been experiencing. I'm sure many other people have experienced is, you can
Absolutely.
only fill your brain with so much at some point. You have to be it, not just think it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the Western world, we are taught to constantly be on the go, to constantly problem solve, to constantly achieve something. There's very few people who give themselves grace, to give themselves space, to give themselves time to be.
Well,
I mean, maybe when we're on vacation, we might have that luxury, but even on vacation, people will fill the space with activities and with things to do or partying or whatever
well,
it might be.
I think it's because we live in a world that does not value self-knowledge, that does not value what might come from the space for that,
Mm.
and what great creative things can happen,
Yeah,
not just in the way you live your life, but also like what you can contribute to the world around you in a different way. Like I really love that saying in the I Ching that says you cannot change the world unless you're prepared to change yourself,
yeah,
which I was
absolutely. And that
right.
is 100% true. 100%. It starts with you. Everything starts with yourself. You are the starting point. You're the seed, right? Like I am the seed. I'm the starting point. And then it ripples out from here, right? That's what ripples into the world. And if we want to change the world, if we want to have better people out there, if we want to have better politics, if we want to have better understanding, more listening, more compassion in the world, more of this or that, or whatever it is that you wish for, right? You gotta start here. This is your starting point. Always.
Okay, well, that kind of naturally leads us to um, self-coaching.
Yeah,
I mean,
perfect.
of course, Sonja is a registered coach, and obviously she's good at it. However, she was gracious enough to talk to us about how what things you can do to create a stronger foundation in your own life. So,
Yeah. Let's talk about self coaching. I mean, we already talked about vulnerability, right? How vulnerability is very important. I would say vulnerability is most important in your relationships with other people, right?
and how
Um,
about your relationship with yourself, though?
yes, so I'm coming to that.
Oh,
So
sorry.
with yourself, what's most important is self honesty and being responsible for how you show up in the world. Um, because sometimes when we go into relationships with other people, and this is something I'm working on myself as well, by the way, I just want to say I'm not perfect. I'm doing the work just as much as anybody else, and working with other people and coaching and helping other people is just helping me to do more of my work as well, right? Like, because I see the mirrors and I see, what other people are struggling with. And oftentimes it's similar struggles to what I'm struggling with. I mean, that's, I guess, why I attract those clients, But, but what I think is really important is that self honesty and integrity around, like, I want to show up as the person that is worth being a part of something, worth being a part of a community, worth being a part of a relationship, worth being part of a friendship that means something, worth being a part of a project or a workforce that's out there that I want to be a part of, that I feel passionate about. I want to be that person. And how do I become that person? Is by one of the most powerful things that I've learned in my 20s is that being your word is the most important thing there is. Because if you're not able to be your word, what is there? What do you have, right? Your word is really important because you speak it out, you speak it to yourself, you speak it to others. And if those words are not kind, if those words are not, especially towards yourself, right, that can create all kinds of trouble. If your word is not meaningful, meaning if you speak a word, but then you change your mind 2 seconds later, and then somebody else is going to be confused because you just said something to them that you really didn't mean, and you then didn't communicate that you changed your mind about it, then
Mhm.
your relationships with other people become difficult, but also you suffer in terms of self-worth, because self-worth comes from
Mhm.
knowing that I am who I am and that I can be my word. that creates a lot of self-worth. Now, if people struggle with self-worth, I always say the first step is be your word as much as possible. Do what you say what you do, be authentic. Just always communicate what's important to you. Like having that tool, and of course with Mars and Uranus and Gemini right now, right? Perfect. That's a great place for us to practice right now.
Yes, because the impulse is going to, stuff may fall out of your mouth that you didn't intend. Well, to give you a perfect
Yes.
example, my older son was just here visiting, and we had a plan to get together yesterday before they left, and it
Mhm.
just didn't work out. But
Mhm.
we were honest with each other, and so
Yes.
it became a non-issue.
Yes.
It became a
Communication,
non-issue.
right?
Yeah.
As long as you communicate, right? As long as you communicate about stuff and you're being honest and straight about it,
Well,
it's not a problem.
I really love that because I think I'd never really thought about it that way. That being your word is a really great place to start because
Yes.
it does make you, if I'm interpreting what you said correctly, it does make you aware of the things that you've committed yourself to and the
Mhm.
things that you've said instead of this is just a throwaway line. And I said it to be nice, but I don't really intend to do it, or whatever your reason is for not doing it. And I
Yeah.
find that to be very encouraging because I really think the world would operate a whole lot better if people were just conscious of what they said. And if
Mhm.
they can't follow through, then be at least honest about it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Being your word doesn't mean that you can't change your mind, by the
yeah,
way. And
I
being your
thank
word doesn't mean that you have to be dogged about something that you said and be like, I cannot quit, I cannot quit. That's not what that means, right? It depends on your personality, obviously. But being your word just means like being your word in every moment. And every moment is a new moment.
right. Well, it strengthens your relationship with yourself,
Yes,
knowing there's that you are doing that anyway, that you're being authentic.
exactly. That you're being authentic.
Because it's
Exactly.
important to be authentic to yourself.
Yes,
If you can't be authentic with
exactly.
yourself, and so do you have
Right.
I have time for maybe one more self-coaching tip.
Okay. Um, well, I have a bunch of things here, but self-compassion, of course, is a big one. We already talked about that. Curiosity, allowing yourself to be curious about yourself and about life. I think sometimes we get stuck in our own personalities. We get stuck in being in the I know who I am type scenario, or I know what I like type scenario. But sometimes just being more open and more curious about, I'm sure you have heard this before where people say like do something daring every day or every week or every month, like do something that you wouldn't normally do. And having that curiosity about like eating something you've never eaten before, right? Or going and taking that roller coaster ride, that you've never taken because you didn't think you wanted to, right?
Line
Whatever.
at I draw the line at bungee jumping, though. I
I'm not saying you have to do it all, right? I'm just saying
know
like
I'm just,
ex- expanding your own comfort zone a little bit, a little bit. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to jump from 0 to 100. But just when we take these baby steps of expanding our comfort zones or just doing things different from how we've done them before, like sometimes I will brush my teeth with my left hand, even though I'm a right handed, just for fun, because I'm like, well, let me see how this feels, and quite honestly, even scientific, there's scientific
really
data, there's scientific data that tells you when you do something with your left hand instead of your right hand, it balances out your brain halves. And it's
wow.
actually really good for your nervous system. It's really good for you. So I didn't know that, of course, when I started doing that. But this is just an example, right? It can be silly things. It can be just something
But,
to
but I think it's interesting because silly can be significant, right?
yeah, yeah,
That we think
absolutely.
because we do get attached to our routines, which is an interesting thing to be talking about while the sun is in Cancer. And
Definitely.
realizing that you could look at your routines and ask yourself, are they actually, because you just do them so automatically.
Yeah. Do they serve you? But also, of course, Cancer is about comfort too, right? So going out of your comfort zone a little bit, tiny, tiny, I call them baby steps because Cancer to me is the energy of the baby energy because it's pre-verbal. So I think of it as like Cancer needs to go out of its comfort zone, but take baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Like little steps.
It does take you
And
back to understanding how you came to experience life, even when you're small. And
yeah,
and of course, it also depends on your temperament because some kids want to start running before they can even walk, and so you can see a lot
yeah,
about temperament. But I
yeah,
think that it's really I love what you've said because we sometimes feel like we should climb the Mount Everest of dealing with getting to know ourselves or being ourselves. We need to accomplish it in a hurry as opposed to, as another friend of mine always says, follow the energy. Just follow the energy.
yeah. Take it slow. There's no rush. There's no rush. You have your whole life, and you have not even this lifetime. You have several lifetimes to do it. So just take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy. Well, I know you have other things on your happy little list.
I do. Do you want more?
Well, I'm kind of running out of time. Trying to be
I know. That's why.
a
I
better
mean,
time
what if
manager.
ask yourself questions? One more, right? Like ask yourself questions, right? Because very often we are into finding answers. We want to figure stuff out. We want to have the answers. And rather than doing that, ask yourself questions. Like, how am I feeling today? Where am I at today? Like, what would be appropriate for me to do today with that energy level that I'm currently in? What's my body telling me? How's my mind feeling? Just little questions like that can really help you understand where you're at each day and can help you like adjust to what you need. Again, Cancer, our needs, right? Our emotional and physical needs. So learning to understand your emotional and physical needs on a daily basis, because every day is different. I woke
Well,
up this morning and I was cranky as hell. I was so cranky. And my husband came out into the kitchen and I looked at him like, ah, like, go away.
what are
Like,
you doing here? No.
what are you doing here? Go away. You know? And that was just, I guess it was the moon in Pisces, worried, of course. I don't know, you know, but I was just cranky. But then the moon moved into Aries. I'm fine now. I'm totally fine. I'm like, yep, let's go. Let's bring it on.
Yeah, I was kind of happy that the moon moved into Aries as well. Um,
So,
so, well, I really want to say thanks. You know, this is the way I'm learning to adjust as I go along and to be open to how things go. Uh, I just love the organic nature of this, and I really appreciate all the things you had to say. It was a lot of fun and very enlightening, and it's these are the kinds of conversations that I feel are important in the world, that we talk more about those things, that cancer really is deeply connected to your vulnerability. It really makes sense that that's the baby state,
mhm.
and that, when you feel threatened or overloaded or whatever, you automatically go to that. And then, so I guess you woke up in that space this morning since you were
Yeah, the sun is already in Cancer, right? So,
and
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me. This was so lovely. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was really great.
Well, and I love conversation myself, as you well know. I think
I
that's
know.
always really important. So apparently the universe has indicated that we're not going to be doing the meditative exercise because we're almost out of time. That's fine because it'll probably work really well in episode 1 of the Leo cycle because the sun will be conjunct Jupiter. So we can talk a little bit more about Jupiter. And oh, what I did want to say about Cancer, it finally popped back in, is that sometimes we forget that it's about growth. Because if you think about what's happening in the physical world, like
Mhm.
plants are finally, really starting to grow and so they can move into the Leo showy part. I don't know, I'm making shit up as I go along. So, I did pick a card for the new moon that comes from this deck of cards, called Soul Coaching, interestingly enough, by Denise Lynn. Really love this deck of cards. And it's got this lovely, look at that, nice blue bird in the sky. But ironically, or synchronistically, depending on your point of view, the card I picked was opening.
Ooh, beautiful.
And now it does say I'm open to receiving the gifts of the universe, but we can change that to
Mhm.
I'm open to receiving the gifts of myself,
Mhm.
right? And I did want to, I've got one more little thing to share, and then we can wrap it up. This is kind of the wrap it up because that's one of my segments. I was making a joke with myself that no one else got, but that's okay. Um, so I got this deck only because I like this book. There's a bookmark that I got that went with it that said she believes she believed she could, so she did.
I love it.
And this seems to me to be no, this is not the one I want. Uh, that's the one I picked for myself. Not not that it, anyway. So this very much goes along with Jupiter and Leo. So we can close by talking a little bit about Jupiter and Leo. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. And that was,
Mm.
I don't know who this person is. And Caron, I think I looked it up and remember what her biography is, so my apologies. But well, first of all, it's got watercolors on it, and that's always one of the things I love. So, in closing, I'd just like to invite everybody to find something that you really like about yourself. And I want you to think about that for a while and maybe meditate on it. Because sometimes we spend far too much time thinking about what's not working as opposed to thinking about who, what about ourselves has always brought us joy, or, part of us that we think is more than okay, that's great. Because we don't take enough time to just quietly acknowledge who we are and what we always bring to the table. So
Mhm.
until next time, please be true to yourself. See ya.
Mhm.
Bye.